There are 4 lines of my grandmother's handwriting left in this world, and not one of them is a recipe. 4 lines. A name inside the cover of a Bible. A date written beside it. 2 words in pencil on the back of a photograph that say the porch. She was born in 1919 and she died in 2003. And in the years between, she fed people almost every day without ever once writing down how. And if you have ever stood in your own kitchen trying to remember exactly how a woman's hands moved and come up with nothing at all, hear this before anything else. You did not lose it. There was never a page to lose. My grandmother understood that better than anybody. She used to say that a thing living in only one place is already half gone. Courthouses burn. Family Bibles get sold off in estate boxes. Names go unprinted, and some of them went unprinted on purpose. So she said everything out loud, over and over, to whoever was standing closest to the stove, because a thing that 9 people carry cannot be taken off a shelf. Here is one of them right now, so you know what kind of list this is. Bacon goes into a cold skillet, not a hot one. You lay the strips into a cold pan and bring the heat up underneath them slowly. The fat comes out gradual and even. The strip lies flat instead of curling, and what pours off at the end is clean. My name is Felicia Grant. I am a genealogical researcher, and I have spent 32 years pulling records for other people's families, roughly 400 families now. Probate inventories, deed books, Freedmen's Bureau labor contracts, church rolls, the census taken every 10 years. Every trick on this list came down the same way. From my mother, and to her from her mother before her, and back past that into women whose names have not survived and probably will not. 32 years of records work taught me one thing that has almost nothing to do with paper. The families I could not trace were never blank. The account was kept. It was just kept somewhere no county clerk ever thought to look, by women who could feed 9 people out of $3 of meat and never measured a thing to do it. So this is 40 of them. 2 are being held back on purpose. Number 12 is something about cake that most people have exactly backwards and that costs nothing to fix. And number 7 is the one that mattered most, because number 7 is the reason a very small piece of meat could feed a whole table. That is the heart of the list, and it stays covered until we get there. If a researcher's grandmother is worth 25 minutes of your evening, go ahead and subscribe. That is the only way to know whether these are worth making. Before the list, the thing most people believe, because it is wrong in an interesting way. Most people believe this knowledge was never recorded. It was recorded. It was recorded the way nearly everything about our families was recorded before about 1900, which is to say, in bodies and habits and repetition, handed from a woman to a girl, standing close enough to feel the heat off the pan. When the census would not print a name, when a will listed a person in the same paragraph as the livestock, the family kept its own account another way. None of what follows is folklore. It is a record, and most of it works for a plain reason, because heat, salt, acid, fat, and time do the same things in your kitchen tonight that they did in hers. Number 40. Test hot oil with the handle of a wooden spoon. Stand the handle straight down until it touches the bottom of the pot. A steady ring of small bubbles climbing the wood means the oil is ready. No bubbles means cold. Hard, fast bubbling means it has gone too far, so pull the pot off the burner. Some people flick in a drop of water instead. That was never allowed at our stove, because water in hot oil spits and there were always children underfoot. Number 39. The grease jar at the back of the stove. Every kitchen in that family had one, a coffee can or a jar with a lid, and the cooking fat went in warm and stayed there. That was not thrift for its own sake. The fat was seasoning. A spoonful under scrambled eggs, a spoonful to start a pot of beans, carrying the taste of everything cooked before it forward into everything cooked after. Number 38. Beans go into cool water the night before. They swell soft and even overnight, and cook in about half the time. She said a pot of beans nobody soaked was a pot that did not respect your morning. Number 37. Salt in 3 passes, never 1. Salt when the onions hit the fat. Salt again when the meat goes in. Taste and salt once more near the end. Each pass reaches a different layer. All of it dumped in at the start gives you food that is sharp on the outside and flat in the middle. Number 36. Fish sits in buttermilk before it sees flour. An hour, longer if you have it. The acid takes the muddy taste out of catfish or whiting and softens the surface so the coating grabs hold and stays on in the oil instead of sliding off in sheets. Number 35. Cornbread comes out of the skillet face down. The moment it leaves the oven, you turn the pan over onto a clean towel and let it drop out bottom up. Steam leaves downward instead of sitting under the crust and softening it. 5 minutes upside down and the crust cracks when you break it. Number 34. Brown your flour dry before it ever meets fat. A cup of plain flour into a dry skillet over medium heat, stirred and stirred until it turns the color of peanut butter. That is where dark gravy comes from. Not from a bottle. Raw flour makes pale gravy that tastes like paste. Now think about the geography under all this, because it matters. My grandmother's kitchen was in western Kentucky. Mine is in Cincinnati, and between the two runs the Ohio River. That river is the whole story of this family in one sentence. People crossed it going north for freedom before the war, and crossed it going north for work after 1916. What crossed with them was almost never furniture. It was a skillet if they were lucky, and it was everything in their hands if they were not. Number 33. Rice makes the pot bigger. When there were more people at the table than there was meat in the pot, you cooked more rice. The meat flavored it and the rice carried it. And a bowl of beans over rice fed a man who had been outside since before light. Every woman in that line understood the arithmetic, and none of them ever called it that. Number 32. Chicken goes through the flour twice. Flour, then buttermilk or egg, then back into the flour. That second pass builds the thick, craggy crust that holds together in the oil. One pass gives you a coating that shatters off onto the plate. Number 31. Pot liquor is the food. It is not the leftover and it is not dirty water. The liquid in the bottom of the greens pot holds everything the greens gave up and everything the seasoning meat gave up. And for generations it was the most nourishing thing on the table. You drink it out of a cup. You cook rice in it. You pour it over cornbread and eat it with a spoon. And be very plain about this, because the opposite advice is going around lately and it is wrong. Nobody in that line ever wrung the liquid out of cooked greens. Nobody squeezed them dry. You lift the greens out with a fork if you are dressing them separately, and the liquor stays in the pot where it belongs. Anyone telling you to press the water out of your greens is telling you to throw away the best thing in the kitchen. Number 30. A pinch of sugar in anything red. Tomatoes bring acid, and that acid turns a pot sour if you let it. A small pinch between your fingers takes the edge off without making anything taste sweet. You are not making dessert. You are balancing a pot. Number 29. Rice water measured at the first knuckle. Rice in the pot, leveled flat, fingertip resting on top of it, then pour water until it reaches your first knuckle. Any pot, any amount. It works because it scales with the surface, and it was right in that kitchen 50 years before anybody printed a ratio on the side of a bag. Number 28. Bacon in the cold skillet, which you already have, and it counts because it set every breakfast in that house. The fat needs a head start on the heat. A hot pan tightens the meat before the fat has anywhere to go, and then the fat steams the strip from the inside instead of leaving it. What pours off a cold start is clean, with none of the bitter scorched bits. Number 27. Stale bread is dessert waiting. Fresh bread turns to mush the second custard hits it. Bread left out overnight has dried just enough to hold its shape and drink up the egg and milk and vanilla without dissolving. Nothing left that kitchen in a garbage can if it could leave it as pudding. Number 26. Taste the liquid, not the leaf. This one came straight from my mother, and it is the most useful thing anybody ever said about seasoning. Do not fish out a piece of the food and taste that. Taste the liquid it is sitting in. If the liquid is right, the food will be right by the time it is done, because the food keeps drinking that liquid the whole time it cooks. Number 25. Skim the gray foam off the beans. When beans first reach a hard boil, a dull foam rises, carrying loose starch that makes the pot cloudy and the beans gritty. Take it off with a spoon and throw it out. 30 seconds. Now, where this list actually comes from, because it is not nostalgia. In 1994, I sat at that kitchen table and asked my grandmother the name of her mother's mother. She was 75 years old. She told me she did not know, and that her own mother had not known either. 32 years later, I still have not answered it. The line runs back to the 1870 census in Kentucky, and then it stops, because 1870 is the first census that printed our people with first and last names in the general population. Before that, most of us appear as a number and an age in a column. 8 years went into finding one probate inventory. 8 years. It named 4 people and none of them was hers. But she had already handed me everything else. That is the part that took me a long time to understand. She could not give a name, and she knew she could not, and that is exactly why she talked the entire time she cooked. She was not being folksy. She was making copies. "Nobody is coming to write this down for you," she said, "so say it to somebody today." Number 24. Roux is finished when it smells like pecans. Equal fat and flour, steady heat, and you do not walk away from it. When it goes past tan, to about the color of a paper bag, and the kitchen smells like roasted pecans, that is it. A minute past that and it is burnt, and everybody who cooks has started one over. Number 23. Low heat and hours for the cuts nobody else wanted. Oxtails, neck bones, shanks, smoked hocks. Lid on, heat low, hours. Connective tissue softens into gelatin, and the meat lets go of the bone. High heat only tightens it. There was never a shortcut on this one. Number 22. A damp cloth over the bread. Hot cornbread or biscuits, under a clean damp towel, stay warm and soft on the table for the better part of an hour. The moisture keeps the surface from drying, while the cloth holds the heat in. Number 21. Coffee in the ham skillet. After country ham comes out, a cup of strong black coffee goes into the hot pan and you scrape up every brown bit. It lifts the pan and turns the drippings into a thin, dark gravy for biscuits or grits. The bitterness of the coffee cuts the salt of the ham and makes them both taste like more. Number 20. Warm the plates. Low oven, or run hot water over them and dry them. Food on a cold plate is lukewarm before everybody sits down. Food on a warm plate holds long enough for grace to be said without anybody watching dinner go cold. Number 19. Grits get stirred in one direction. Into boiling water, slow, always the same way around the pot. Turning back and forth breaks up what is trying to set, and you get lumps that will not come out no matter how long you cook them. One direction, patient, and they go creamy without any cream at all. Number 18. Every bone goes in the bag. Chicken bones from Sunday, the ham joint at Christmas, the turkey frame the day after. Into a bag in the freezer, and when the bag is full, it goes into the biggest pot in the house with water, an onion cut in half, whatever celery has gone limp, a carrot if there is one, and it sits on the back burner most of a day. What comes out is a pot of gold-colored liquid that makes any soup, any gravy, any pot of rice taste like it took a week. The collagen out of the joints is what sets it up thick when it cools, and that is the whole difference between soup that clings to a spoon and soup that runs off it. My grandmother kept a stock pot going through most of every winter. She called it the second stove, because it heated the kitchen and fed the family at the same time. Asked once why she kept a bag of bones in the freezer, she said that bag is a week of soup that has not happened yet. Number 17. The cracked oven door is the warming shelf. Turn the oven off, pull the rack out an inch or two, crack the door, and set the plates or a covered bowl there. The heat already inside holds the food without cooking it further. Nobody in that house called it a warming drawer. It was just what the oven did after it was done. Now, who this cost and who it paid. Nobody sat in a room and decided to take this knowledge away from anybody. That is not what happened. What happened is duller and harder to fix. This knowledge was free, and free things do not get preserved, they get replaced by things somebody can sell you. A bottle of browning sauce replaced a skillet of dry flour. A carton of stock replaced a bag of bones. A packet of seasonings replaced knowing when to salt. None of those products are villains. Every one of them is convenient, and there is a carton of stock in this kitchen right now for the nights the work runs late. But every one of them is also somebody selling back, at a markup, a thing your great-grandmother did for nothing. And the more of them sit in the cabinet, the fewer reasons anybody has to stand beside you at the stove and show you. She had a line for that, too. They can lose a courthouse, she said. They cannot lose what 9 women know. Number 16. Score the ham before the glaze. A sharp knife, a diamond pattern cut into the fat on top, then the glaze. The cuts let sugar and spice down into the meat instead of leaving it sitting on the surface, and the scored edges caramelize into ridges that are the best bites on the whole ham. Number 15. A whole onion goes into the greens and never gets eaten. One peeled onion dropped in with the collards or the turnips, left to cook down for hours. It gives up its sweetness slowly and evens out the bitterness greens carry on their own. When the greens are ready, you fish the onion out and set it aside. Its job is finished. Number 14. Knock on the cornbread and listen. Open the oven and tap the top with a knuckle. Hollow means done. Dense and flat means 5 more minutes. My grandmother never set a timer for cornbread in her life. She listened to the pan. Number 13. Vinegar goes in at the very end. A splash of apple cider vinegar into the greens right before they reach the table. The acid lifts everything that has been sitting together for hours. Without it, greens taste deep but flat. With it, every bite finishes with a small bright edge that makes you want the next one. Number 12. Here is the one that was held back, and it is about cake. Pound cake starts in a cold oven, not a preheated one. The pan goes into an oven that is stone cold, then the oven gets turned on, and the cake and the heat come up together. Almost everybody does the opposite, because almost everybody assumes preheating is a rule that applies to everything. A pound cake started cold, rises slower, and rises longer, so the top does not set into a crust before the middle has finished climbing. You get an even crumb all the way through, and a flatter top instead of a dome with a crack down the center. It takes maybe 15 minutes longer than the recipe says, so you go by the tester and not by the clock. There was one tube pan in that house, and she could not stand an ugly cake. That is the entire reason anybody figured it out. Number 11. Render your own lard. White fat from around a pork loin, or a piece from the butcher, cut small and set in a heavy pot on low heat until it melts down clear. Strain out the solids, pour the clean fat into a jar. That is the flakiest biscuit and the crispest fried chicken you will ever have. The browned bits left in the strainer go on top of cornbread, and nobody in that house ever had to be told to eat them. Number 10. Too much salt is not the end of the pot. Oversalted vegetables get water added, brought back up, then a good deal of it drained off. The salt goes out with the water. This will not rescue a stew or anything thickened, and it costs you some flavor along with the salt, but it saves a pot of beans or greens that was about to be thrown out. My mother saved a lot of dinners this way and never once admitted she had needed to. Number 9. Cast iron is earned. A new skillet is rough and gray. You cook in it, wipe it out with a little fat, keep it dry, and over years it builds a dark, slick surface nothing sticks to. That is layers of fat baked into the metal by heat and repetition. Nobody can hand it to you finished. Her skillet came down from the woman before her, and it is sitting in my kitchen tonight. Number 8. Onion, celery, bell pepper, chopped fine and cooked soft in fat before anything else goes in. That is the starting line under gumbo, under smothered chops, under stewed okra, under dirty rice. The onion brings sweetness, the celery a green bite, the pepper brightness. Learn that one combination once, and it carries you the rest of your life. Number 7. The seasoning meat goes into the pot before the water. This is the one being held, and it is the one that mattered most, because this is how a very small amount of meat fed a very large number of people for a very long time. The smoked hock, or the salt pork, or the turkey wing, goes into the dry pot first, overheat, by itself. Let it take color and start giving up its fat. Then the onion. Then the water or the broth. Only then the greens or the beans or whatever the pot is actually for. That order puts the fat and the smoke into the liquid at the very beginning, so everything cooking in that pot afterward is seasoned from the inside. Put the meat in after the water, and it sits there boiling, flavoring the top of the pot and not the bottom of it. That order is the difference between one hawk flavoring a pot for 9 people and one hawk flavoring one bowl. And understand where it came from, because it did not come from a chef. The hawk, the neck, the tail, the jowl, the feet ended up in our kitchens because they were what remained after the valuable cuts went elsewhere. That is documented. You can read it in plantation provisioning records and in Freedmen's Bureau labor contracts from the 1860s, where rations are written out by the pound, and what is written out is meal and molasses and the cheap parts of the hog. So the technique is not a preference. It is an answer to a problem, worked out by people who were handed the worst of it and had to make it feed everybody anyway. Cook a pot of greens that way tonight, and you are running a solution somebody in your line invented under conditions nobody should have had to survive. Number 6. Pickle juice in the potato salad. A splash from the jar, stirred in while the potatoes are still warm so it soaks. The vinegar and salt season the potato from the inside and keep the whole thing from going heavy once the mayonnaise arrives. Good potato salad has one thing in it nobody can name and everybody misses. Number 5. Yesterday's rice is tomorrow's breakfast. Cold rice into a hot skillet with a little fat, an egg cracked over it, and whatever is left in the refrigerator. Onion ends, a piece of sausage, a handful of greens. Cold rice fries better than fresh because it has dried out enough to crisp at the edges. 5 minutes, a full plate, almost no money. Number 4. Let the dough sit down before you roll it. Mix your biscuit dough and then leave it alone 10 or 15 minutes. Do not poke it. Do not roll it right away. The gluten relaxes, the fat firms back up, and the dough stops fighting you. Dough worked immediately bakes up tough. Number 3. Watermelon rind becomes preserves. Green skin peeled off, white rind cut into cubes, cooked with sugar and vinegar and spices until it turns clear and sweet. It tastes like something between a pickle and a candy, and it comes out of the part of the melon most people put in the trash. In a house that could not afford waste, the rind was dessert. Number 2. Put the spoon in a child's hand. Let her stir. Let her pour the batter and crack the egg even though there will be shell in the bowl and somebody will be fishing it out. That is not a mess. That is the copy being made. A child standing at the stove beside her grandmother learns things in her hands that she will never be able to explain to anybody who was not there. My grandmother handed me the spoon when I was standing on a kitchen chair to reach the counter. She said, "Now you know it too, and that means it is in 2 places." Number 1. Nobody measured anything. Not a cup, not a spoon, not a pinch that came out of a set. She cooked by sight and by sound, and by the way a batter came off the back of a spoon. She knew the greens needed salt from the color of the liquor. She knew biscuits were done from the smell coming through the kitchen door before she opened the oven. People call that intuition. It is not. Intuition is a guess. That was a woman who had done a thing 10,000 times and whose hands had stopped needing permission from her mind. A recipe would only have slowed her down. Now the honest part, before anybody goes and tries this. Some of these will not do much for you. Warming the plates is a small thing, and it stays small. If you already brown your flour, that trick gains you nothing tonight. And the cold oven pound cake will not work well in every oven, because many newer ovens run a fan and a fast preheat cycle, and will not give the slow climb the method depends on. In that case, you get a decent cake and not a revelation, and it is better to say so now. And here is the one that costs something. This list will not give you your grandmother back. That has to be said plainly, because I do this for a living and I watch people hope for it. Technique survives. What does not survive is the specific way one particular woman salted her own pot on her own stove, and if she is gone, that specific thing is gone, and no list on the internet will return it. Which is exactly why there is something to do this week. 2 things, and neither costs $1. The first is to cook 1 meal without opening a recipe. Just 1. Do it the way you remember somebody doing it, and let it be imperfect. The second matters more. Call the oldest living person in your family this week. Not to interview them, just ask what their mother cooked on a Sunday and what the kitchen smelled like. Then write down what they say, with the date, and put it somewhere that is not your phone. That is a primary source. 20 years from now, it may be the only copy, and one copy is exactly what my grandmother spent her whole life warning about. Then come down to the comments and leave 2 things: the county and state your people cooked in, and one trick from that kitchen that is not on this list of 40. The county matters because these techniques traveled along migration routes, and when enough of you name yours, the pattern of what moved where starts to show. Every one of them gets read. Next time this goes to the records themselves, and you will see exactly how to pull a Freedmen's Bureau ration list for your own county, because once you see what your people were issued by the pound, you will understand why they cooked the way they cooked. Your people left you more than a name. Go find the rest.